Hello and welcome. In the previous lecture, you looked at the definition of the Kubernetes deployment for the REST API server. In this lab, you will create the Kubernetes deployment for the REST API server. Let's get started. You can find a PDF file with the full list of the commands you will run under the resources attached to this lab. Please download this PDF file now and keep it handy to help you with typing the commands for this lab. Launch your terminal and make sure you are at the Fibonacci sample/K8 directory. We do not need the replica set anymore, since we will replace it with a better alternative in the form of a deployment. Run this command to delete the replica set. Wait a few seconds, then type this command to list all objects in the cluster to make sure that the replica set and the pods are deleted. Run this command to create the deployment and list all the available Kubernetes objects right after. Please note the following in the command output. A replica set has been created. Please note that the replica set name comes from appending a random identifier to the deployment name to give the replica set a unique name. There are 5 pods being created. Please note that the pod name comes from appending a random identifier to the replica set name to give the pod a unique name. The replica set has a desired and current number of pods of 5. There is currently 0 ready pods as the pods are still being created. Wait a few seconds, then list all the Kubernetes objects in the cluster again. You should have 5 pods in a running state, and the replica set should have a count of 5 ready pods. To learn more about the deployment, use the kubectl describe command. A lot of interesting information about the deployment is printed to the console. For instance, the events section shows that the replica set has been scaled up to 5 pods. There is also information about the labels and the selectors, as well as the replicas of the pods. Run this command to list the existing services. You should still have the services that you created in a previous lab. If you don't have them, create them using this command. The node port service is available at host port 370. It exposes the pods we just created using the deployment because they match the label selector of the service, app equals Fibonacci and tier equals backend. Launch this URL in the browser to test the deployment. Refresh the browser a few times and you will see the service cycle the requests through all the available 5 pods. Issue the following command to scale the deployment down to 3 replicas. Wait a few seconds, then list the available objects, and you will see that you only have 3 pods in a running state. What happens if we delete one of the remaining 3 pods? Copy the name of one of the pods and run the following command to delete the pod. If you list the available objects again, you will still have 3 pods because the deployment created a new pod in place of the one you just deleted. The deployment keeps its promise of always maintaining 3 replicas of the pod. Let's scale the deployment up to 5 pods again. This time we will do it using the Kubernetes edit command. You will see a YAML file for the deployment open in the default system editor, usually vi. The contents of this YAML file is much more extensive than the YAML file we used to create the deployment. This is because kubectl edit command enables you to edit all the properties of a Kubernetes object. This includes properties that you did not specify when you created the object, and therefore they got a default value. Let me explain this by an example. We did not specify a deployment strategy in the original YAML file. Yet the kubectl edit command brings a YAML file that includes the definition of a deployment strategy with default values. We have a strategy type of rolling update by default. We will look further into the rolling update in the next lab. For now, edit the definition and set the replicas to 5 and save. You get a message that the deployment has been edited. Run this command to confirm that the deployment has 5 replicas. If you prefer to use a different editor with the kubectl edit command than the default vi editor, you can do so by setting the value for the kube_editor environment variable. For instance, run the following command to use Nano as your editor while editing the deployment. Let's do a progress check of the application at this point. In this lab, you have created a Kubernetes deployment with 5 replicas for the REST API server. You experimented with scaling up and scaling down the deployment. That's it for this lab. Thank you and see you in the next lab.